So, welcome to part 2 of this 4-part video series of me playing on Guts Poker in the microgaming pool. Yeah, I mean, what happened here? That's bizarre. I suppose I just posted. Okay, just posted, never posted the blinds, that's not really good. Okay, easy, continue. Without further introduction, let's jump right into the action. If you want to have some more information about like Guts Poker or like microgaming in general, go ahead and check out part 1 of this video series. I did talk quite a bit about the first episode bonus and so on in there. So, yeah. I will again play 3 anonymous tables today. Just going to check down because I simply have some showdown value. Wow, he checks that on the turn. That's bizarre. So yeah. Yeah, let's jump into the action and see what happens. So, opening up the ace-3 offsuited. Have a recreational. Ah, yeah, that's what I was saying. So I'm gonna play again on 3 anonymous tables because I do think they are softer. I did go a bit more into depth because why I'm playing them in part 1. Mainly because I'm not using a HUD on microgaming and that's not a disadvantage at these tables. So, excuse me. I have to take a sip of water. Throat is getting a bit dry. Sorry for that. I caught something in my throat or something. Okay. The king high board's generally good for us as the opener. Just gonna 1/3 here, or a bit more than 1/3. We obviously have the backdoor flush draw. We obviously can barrel on some turns. For example, this turn we are probably gonna barrel. We do block some relevant hands like strong flush draws and some king X's, and we definitely do get some under pairs or like middle third pairs and whatnot to fold. Or sometimes we even get some value here, which is kind of crazy, but yeah, sometimes he has a flush draw with a worse actual hand than ours. And easy fold to raise. And here we just lead with our nut 10. And the 8 is a pretty trivial isolate, pretty strong hand. Not thrilled to see a flop. On this flop we can kind of go either way. We can check or we can 1/3. I like to 1/3 versus slim call range. Slim call range is still rather wide. Getting some protection is certainly a thing. It's a pretty thin value bet. It's more like overprotection / value bet. And he checks, and we're gonna just check down, hope to beat an ace high, or like a hand like pocket 6s, or like a 7. I don't think we can bet. I don't think we want to turn our hand into a bluff. If we lose to a 10, we lose to a 10. Yeah, that's fine. Pretty bizarre hand to see in a limping range, to be quite honest with you, from the button. But yeah, sure. I'm fine with 1/3ing the flop there. Certainly gonna cut myself sometimes there, but I'm really just gonna check fold because I do think he probably c-bets his hand, and then we'll call one street or whatever. And yeah, kinda lose even more than we would right now because with the 1/3 we also dictate the sizing. We also get to realize our equity, like we had a backdoor straight draw and we could hit an 8. So yeah. I probably wouldn't see with pocket 6s there. Just dominating the 7x part of range, which is a small part of range granted, but it is in there at some frequency. I do think that makes a difference. So I'm basically my bottom of my c-bet range there in terms of values like ace 7 plus. Basically hands that also can get some value and gain from protection. The ace jack we could consider to cold 4-bet, but given no reads, given no hard stats, I'm just gonna play a bit more fit or fold. Yeah. I hope the light in the background is not too shiny, but should be fine. Yeah, seems to be okay. Yeah. So last time I mentioned that I want to go into like some general tips and tricks which you can do while grinding, which should higher your win rate and also higher your gonna flat here. 3-betting is certainly fine. Folding is IMO not really an option here with the jack 10 suited. Before I continue, let's play this pot. Oh, he bets really hard. I kind of want to float with the 80 into 120. That's just too big. So there are generally a lot of tips and tricks what you can do to kind of higher your performance. One of those is definitely to always stay hydrated. You will also see me sipping on my water a decent bit overall. It's super important to stay hydrated, just alone for your brain power. Gonna definitely increase your thinking power if you want to say so. And as you see me with my Ike Hexton look, I'm also wearing glasses, which I didn't in the Zoom video. But generally, if you wear glasses IRL, or if you kind of have to wear glasses to drive, I honestly only have to wear them to drive. But I also always wear them when I grind, because it's just, I don't know, to me, I get not as sleepy as fast, basically. Because it's really exhausting for the eyes to, especially because I play on two monitors, so I'm like constantly looking left, right. It's getting really exhausting for the eyes. So the glasses do help them to, to make it a bit easier for the eyes. Those are really like some general tips I'm just gonna share here. Might just be obvious to a lot of you guys, I don't know. Might be a lot of you don't care about that and just want to hear about strategy, but I do think you can gain a lot of win rates in other part with like other things besides the actual strategy part of the game. And a lot is resolving around the mental game of poker. Which also for me, I'm never just starting right into a session, right? I'm always kind of preparing myself, always analyzing some hands before, reviewing and analyzing some hands, or watching like a video before I start my session. Oftentimes I'm meditating before I start my sessions, or I'm stretching a bit. For example, my stretching a neck my bit, because what I just said that I'm always looking left, right. So I want my neck to be warmed up. Things like that. I do think those things actually sum up. Like, all of them are kind of small things, but if you do them all, it actually sums up and gains you some decent flat out win rate IMO. Like, you just gain win rate from those things. For example, you just gain win rate by playing while being like not drunk to make like a really hard example, right? The higher your thinking performance, the higher your performance, the more fresh you feel, the higher your win rate will be. As simple as that. Okay, right here we have like two options. I think we're just gonna 1/3, kind of for the reasons we always, or we 1/3 a lot, which is protection and value. Also, if we 1/3, we let him like float wider, which with our hand, well, we don't necessarily want him to float wide because we do want to get the protection. At the same time, if he floats really wide with like all queen jack, king jack, whatever, we get a lot of value by that because he still usually misses them. And yeah, right here, I think we could range 1/3, but there's a button over flat range, button versus UTG. I'm just gonna check and probably check call. Besides, if he bets like pot, then I'm just gonna fold. For 1/3 with the backdoor flush, without the backdoor flush, I would honestly just fold more likely, because I think his range is overall pretty strong, even though he's recreational. But with the backdoor flush, I think we have a pretty trivial call. Just 20% of turns will immediately. That's interesting. So I think once he checks back, snap checks back turn, I don't think he's gonna bluff a whole lot. So I kind of do think, honestly, I do think it's a really polarized spot. Either he has the ace or he doesn't. So I'm just gonna bet pot, and I don't think he ever folds the ace. If he has like ace queen or ace 10, he's just not gonna fold, regardless of my sizing, basically. So I want to maximize my my value there. And I don't think he's going to bluff a lot once he snap checks back the turn. I think a lot of the hands we would assume bluff river would just bluff turn. And yeah. And if he has a hand like, I don't know, let's say pocket 8s or like a 4th pair hand, we're not really going to get value out of that hand anyways. Pretty easy 3-bet in these positions. Don't be afraid to 3-bet your pocket jacks in those positions at least. Here we could 3-bet or flat. I do think flat is slightly superior. But 3-betting is certainly okay. On this texture, we're just going to peel one street at least. Gonna see a turn here. Hope he doesn't pot it. He bets half pot, pretty easy call. He could bet pocket 9s, pocket 8s, he could bet worse hands, he could just see ace queen. We do have a backdoor flush, we can always improve to the 10. Another overcut comes, this kind of incentivizes him to barrel like ace queen, queen 10, ace 10 type of hands, so even though we kind of block like some of the hands I just mentioned. Right here with the tens, with the sixes, sorry, I think it's rather close. I think we can flat or we can fold. Without a lot of like fishes behind, I'm just gonna press the fold button. I do think flatting is certainly okay. If I was in the button, I would flat. If I had like the guaranteed position, I would flat. But in these positions, I do think it's kind of close. I would still flat pocket sevens and pocket eights, and I don't mind flatting sixes there, but I also don't think it's really that amazing. He kind of reps jack eights of spades with his line. The bad check bad line is just generally really underbluffed, so I'm just gonna let it go. I mean, it's a pretty easy fold. I have third pair. And he certainly might be bluffing there, but I don't think a lot of the hands we would assume to bluff river already barrel turn. Like ace queen with one spade, I do think always barrels turn, so I don't think he really gets to the river with that. Yeah. King 3, probably gonna be an open. Oh, damn, look at that turn. I wanna have my hand back. Give me my hand back. Ah, never mind. Don't need my hand back. Sorry. False alarm. Don't want my hand back. King Jack versus Ace Queen. Ace Queen just checks it down. Pretty nitty. Yeah, pretty nitty. Bada boom, bada boom. King 3. Waiting on them to act. 9-6, so this is a pretty prime example for a hand I do think would generally be a defend versus a min open, but I do think it gets too submerged by rake, so I think that's just a fold. Bottom of my calling range here would be, well, if I min I would definitely defend 9-8 off. 9-7 is also close, but 9-6 is just a fold. Like, I do think, in theory, it's a call for min, and we do have to defend a lot for min, but I think this hand just doesn't, yeah, just gets too fucked by rake. Let's be that bold about it. And to be quite honest, it's really not a great hand to begin with. But yeah, you're generally not supposed to fold a lot versus min. But yeah, I do think there it's the best option. The pocket nines, he isolates. I would have isolated him as well. Right now I don't think I really want to 3-bet, so I'm just gonna flat. And on this flop, yeah, we have some backdoors, but it's really marginal. Like, if he beat c-bets, I'd probably just fold. Turn the gin card, turn absolute Jesus. Like Hedon would say. I'm just gonna bet relatively big. This guy still has a lot of decent hands that can continue. Take it down. Would have been an ugly river anyway, so yeah. There will be a lot of ugly rivers as well. So we don't really mind taking it down there. I mean, we obviously would rather get the call, but you know, it's okay. And I did size up there a bit because I do think it's a still quite dynamic board, and I think the recreational could have checked a lot of hands that still connect with the board, because like he's, yeah, maybe not that likely to donk there. I do think the button usually has like nothing there, but he could still have some hands that continue there, like Queen 10, for example. I mean, pretty easily there with the set, honestly. Could consider to check raise, but for that, I don't know. I think leading is better. The ace deuce versus a small blind flat versus a recreational, I'm gonna check back, allow him to hit a pair, allow him to stab on the turn. And yeah, I think this is getting like too thin if we go for more than 1 or 2 streets. And this happens sometimes, and I'm not really gonna fold my hand, honestly, versus a recreational. I don't know, it just... Yeah, I'm just gonna station him down here. He just snap checks it now, which is really bizarre. So what pots the turn and now snap checks what I can get value of? Like this, do pocket 10s really just pot the turn? Seems unlikely. Does he really just have a hand like a 9 that pots the turn? Like versus a recreational, yeah, I'm tempted to call him. I really don't see that we can get a lot of value here, so we are definitely cutting ourselves here sometimes. If there's a recreation, I'm still going to go for a really tiny bet. And we chop it up. Which makes sense. I mean, that's kind of like a result I also expected to happen reasonably often. I do think it's like definitely too thin there to value bet in a way. But versus a recreational, I did make an exception and just went for it. Because basically recreationals can do certain things we wouldn't expect. And with the tiny bet, we might also sometimes induce a spaz. I mean, I'm obviously not happy once he raises there, right? But once I bet so small, and after that line, I probably would station him down. Not really feeling too great about it. Excuse me while I take another sip of water. Really have to stay hydrated, especially because the weather is really warm. My throat is kind of running a bit dry. The king's kind of sad to get a fold, but sure. Quite happy. 3-bet pre. Not a lot to say about that one. Could go a bit out of line and 3-bet the king jack here, but let's keep it mellow. Keep it on the low end. The pocket 3 is actually in a bit of an interesting spot. So you will have a lot of continues. Our hand gains a lot from protection. I mean, don't get me wrong, this is definitely not a value bet in any sort of way. But what I could do here, like, it's two options, right? I could check fold and just give up, or I could just merge c-bet. So if I merge c-bet, I get him. I'm gonna just check fold this time. If I just merge c-bet, I can get him off hands like pocket 4s to pocket 8s, which are a chunk of combinations which just kind of always fold. Also, we do get some value by like his gutter type of hands, which might just check down then. And yeah, sometimes we get like protection of a hand, even like 7-8 suited of spades, 5-6 of spades, and yeah. So there are like a lot of things we get by betting. At the same time, it's obviously really marginal. I'm just gonna check down and hope to ever beat anything, which really seems somewhat impossible on this run out. Yeah, the 8-9. I mean, the 8-9 wouldn't fold the flop to begin with. Let's make a rather loose opening with 2 recreationals behind. Yeah, the 8-9 wouldn't fold flop, so wouldn't have worked with that hand. But yeah, it's I mean, it kind of also depends on like the positions, and I do think in like there's a big blind range, it's not as good. But if he has like a range that has like a lot of middle pairs, like for example a cutoff overcall range or like an MP overcall range, it makes more sense to do kind of like merge your bottom end of your pocket pairs. Like basically, if you can find a ton of pairs that just are better but just always fold, and you sometimes get value, and you sometimes get protection, and you like also realize your equity, right? Still 5% of the time we do improve on a turn to a pretty nutted holding. So yeah. Like I definitely don't think it's like a mandatory c-bet or whatever. I think check folding is definitely fine. But I do think it's something you can consider to implement into your game. At least in certain situations. Maybe we come across another of these spots and I can showcase it a bit better, because I don't think this was necessarily like the best spot to do. Yeah, to do it. Mainly because I think he has a million combinations of king x and ace x there. While if he has a button overcall range, he just doesn't have as many of like the ace-deuce offsuited type of junky hands. He just doesn't have those. While in the BB, he has those junky hands, which just make up for a lot of combinations. So yeah, I think in that particular spot, check folding is better. While I do think c-betting is not outrageous. Yeah, it's the thing, like, I'm always saying it. People are too drastic about certain things. People are like oftentimes thinking in like in really either or paradigms, right? So in like black or white, right? But they are like definitely shades of gray. They are definitely shadow areas, right? Yeah, there are some spots where it's just terribly in terms of EV to do one option, right? But there are like a lot of spots where both options or sometimes all three options are definitely viable and it's close-ish, and it kind of comes down to assumptions on the player and so on. So yeah, like it sometimes might sound like kind of weird to say I do think everything is fine here, but there are certainly spots where that's just true. It's just initially the nature of poker that like a lot of the spots, your EV of like betting, checking, or raising, or folding are like all going to be somewhat similar. There are like a decent bit of those spots. Especially pre-flop. Yeah, like especially pre-flop you come across those spots quite frequently. Where like either 3-betting, folding, or calling are fine. And in like a perfectly theoretical way, you want to mix it up and have frequencies. Like for example, 3-bet at like a 20% frequency, flat at a 60% frequency, fold to other percentages. But like in a vacuum, I think kind of whatever you're doing, like certain spots preflop, it's just going to be fine. So I do think people are too drastic about that in general when reviewing hands or when generally talking about those things. For example, here I do think the EV of free betting is definitely a decent bit better than flatting. While I do think the EV of flatting is certainly going to be plus EV and like good plus EV, right? But I do think like the EV of free betting is just here in that situation a decent bit better than flatting. But always keep in mind, flatting will be a profitable play in that spot, right? It's not just going to be unprofitable, it's just less profitable than our other option. And obviously we always want to try to do the maximum EV option. All I wanted to say is like, we just can't always be too drastic and too hard in a lot of those spots. Pocket deuces, gonna open, not really feeling thrilled about it, but sure. It's a pair, can flop a set. Small blind flats, this is a board I obviously have like a relatively... for example, actually I think this is a reasonable spot. He has a small blind flatting range, which generally, I mean, he's a reg, so it's probably wider than it should be. I'm just gonna see bet. I just think all his pairs between 3s and even 10s, honestly. I mean, he's a reg ratio, so this might not be like literally true, but I would assume that 3s through 10s fold most of the time. And those are, I mean, how many combos are there? 3. So they're like okay, I don't want to do, yeah. There are a bunch of combinations. I mean, I guess I could do the math. It's 8 times 6, which is 40, which is 48. I just didn't want to fuck it up, so to embarrass myself, but I think it's 48, the 3s through 10s, right? If I didn't fuck it up, 8 times 6 should be correct. It should be 48. So roughly around like 50 combinations of like middle pairs there, which just straight up fold close to always, which he probably has always in his range. Generally, a small blind flatting range is more defined and like more narrow than like a BB flatting range, right? He's a recreational, so this might not be literally true. I'm gonna overlimp here with the recreational. I think it's pretty marginal, but I think it's fine to complete. I could lead here, but just gonna check. Yeah, getting to fold those is like a reasonable result. Also, folding a hand like 9-8 suited or like 7-8 suited, 7-6 suited with the deuces, pretty reasonable result, right? We do gain the protection from getting counterfeit. And sometimes, like, it sounds ridiculous, but sometimes you get value from like ace-10, ace-queen. Sure, those hands are not doing a mistake by calling. I'll peel here with the backdoor flush and my top pair. Those hands are not doing a mistake by calling at all, sure. But at the same time, I do think it's gonna happen reasonably often that they just miss and we just check down and win versus ace-queen high there. I don't think ace-queen high is gonna bluff a lot. Versus like the lead call, he also has a lot of deuce X here. Lead call, I'm just gonna fold my hand. Pretty happily so. Don't think my queen 7 is necessarily good here a lot. Even though his range is still pretty wide. Check, and you just pass the top bow. Wow. That's a pretty good hand. But yeah, it's a hand he's gonna have. So yeah, rambling along about it, deuces spot. I do think c-betting that's fine. And sizing wise, the problem about sizing small versus recreational, they're like, you could argue that like a 1/3 bet is kind of doing the same. But pretty mandatory open, pretty mandatory isolate, and pretty mandatory open here. Here we're probably gonna fold. I mean, if this guy like cold calls now, we're probably gonna see a flop. You could argue that like a 1/3 bet kind of does the same job as the half pot bet, I bet. But I don't think versus a recreational that's true. I think recreational is gonna call too often with his middle pairs. He actually calls. That's sick. So versus a BB, I'm gonna see bet 1/3 here. For like mainly protection value type of jazz. I suppose we set mine here. It's kind of marginal, honestly. Folding is probably fine. Let's set mine here. Being sandwich is never good. We got raised here. That's fine. That's a shame. Folding the ace queen high. Okay, we miss. Sometimes you see a turn here, but I mean, we saw 4. I mean, that's great to see 4 cards instead of 3. It's always a good result if you have a set maker. Sometimes we even see a river here, and if we river the 5, it's still going to be a happy spot. Honestly, I do think folding pre is certainly a fine option there. The pocket 5s, but I also don't think calling is outrageous. I think it's close, basically. Yeah. A7, hopefully gonna see a flop. We can 3-bet here blind on blind. We can also flat. I'm gonna like to flat my hand. See a flop in position. Relatively good flop. More than average for sure. Oh, had a bit of a voice crack there. C-betting around half pot should kind of get the job done. Should fold his under pairs. Should fold his random garbage hands. So getting some protection there. Uncapping our range by c-betting. Yeah, all the good things. Building a pot if we hit. All the good things. Hopefully gonna see some fireworks. Okay, min open, call, closing the action. Definitely gonna call my suited queen here versus 2 recreationals. Kind of happily so. I mean, I'm not thrilled, but relatively happy about it. Bad spot. Easy fold. Check 9, happy open, happy to see ace king. My good old friend, trying to get my stacks in versus this guy. Hopefully he jams. Check 9, flop an open ender, c-bet around half pot, fold out his ace highs. Nice, get it in. Versus what? Ace queen. That's always a good spot to be in. He's drawing pretty slim. Okay. Slim doesn't mean that though. With the backdoor flush, enter open ender. I mean, this is what I would expect to get attacked on a reasonable bit. Still a mandatory c-bet and a mandatory call versus his raise. That's a relatively good turn. Right here we can either 1/3 or check. I think on this kind of coordinate text I'm gonna check. I actually think he has a decent bit of ace highs once he snap checks back the flop, so I'm not really gonna bother. And I do think I have some. Does he just have check fold? Honestly, let's try. Does he just have the fold button rest of turn? I mean, he was just snap checking there, right? Yeah, I have no idea. Maybe I also just had the best hand. I don't know. Maybe that was a bit being too assumptive about his timing there. Anyways, here on the diamond we do have a pretty easy continue still. On the queen, ace jack will beat us, but that should never be a thing. Check raising the flop, right? The 9 is still pretty clean. I mean, queen jack beats us then, but that also probably is not a thing on the flop, but it could be. So yeah, we call here. And we break. That's gonna happen most of the time. Pretty trivial call though. On both streets, pretty easy open and pretty easy c-bet. Right here we're gonna defend. It's kind of marginal in a small blind versus this position. I don't think, like, I'm not thrilled, but I think this hand is gonna play okay enough to defend. But it certainly has some domination issues, the king highs. But yeah, he didn't make it super big. And I do imagine my post-flop edge is generally pretty high, pretty big. So I do think, okay, this is interesting. So I don't think he's gonna fold ace highs here, honestly. So I'm just gonna check down and hope to get a turn where I can actually get his ace kings to fold. Pretty mandatory. 3-bet with the aces. Also could see, yeah. So actually I think he caps his range way too much here to not abuse him. So what I will do here is actually double barrel. Even though I block his ace kings, which is kind of unfortunate, I do think I'm going to exploitatively double barrel here. I do think this is a hot spot to double barrel him off his ace king and ace queen highs. He might just fold turn, which would be a really good result. We also have some equity going into the river. And I just think I don't think he's balanced there at all whatsoever. So I'm just gonna barrel turn and I'm then gonna barrel river because I still think he calls his ace queens and ace kings a lot on a turn. So I think I have to double barrel if I want to make my hand a plus EV barrel, and I would do it. He bets pretty big, so generally I would check raise some of these. I would rather check raise the 7-8 with the diamond here though. And versus the sizing, I'm a bit afraid that he's not gonna fold enough, and then I sometimes will face a re-raise, which would be awful with this hand. So we're just gonna flat. And relatively bad turn. Could be drawing that. He snap checks it back, so we're definitely gonna lead the river for half pot. Expecting at least his some hands to fold. Just clicks it back into our face. Easy fold. Not a lot to do there. Easy lead on the river. I don't think we need to size bigger. We could even size smaller because we mainly want to get him off his ace highs and his own draws there. So yeah. And we do have some fold equity with like some 5x as well. Like some really weak pairs might fold. Especially once another overcut comes in. I think there's a reasonable chance. I don't think he ever folds a 10. But then again, I think most of his 10x just bet the turn. So yeah. Pretty trivial and mandatory river lead there. For sure. I also don't think blockers really matter there, but we unblock his flush draws, which helps. And we do block some stronger hands like 7s and 8s, which might be hands that bluff catch on the river generally. But yeah, generally, I mean, he has a lot of like random junk hands in the button range, which we can just get him off by betting, so we just bet our 0 showdown value hand. Checking achieves like close to nothing there. Besides that, we lose a whole bunch, and I mean, we can't really check raise there. I mean, we could, but it's like ambitious to go for a check raise there. Maybe it's fine in a vacuum, but pretty ambitious. Opening Jack-9 UTG, Jack-9 suited UTG is generally worth 0 bagels. By that I mean it's breaking even. It's not gonna win money, it's not gonna lose money. In, like, theory. Depending on, like, how good or bad my opponents are, it might be winning or losing. And this hand definitely gets submerged by rake to some degree. But yeah, I was just assuming that my opponents are bad enough to make an open. But this is certainly on the loose side and like bottom of range. Pretty easy flop check, pretty easy turn check still. You might be tempted to bet this turn because you have a flush draw now, but honestly like your relatively hand strength is really not that amazing still. And I would rather just play it like pot control-y. So pretty easy river lead. I think we're gonna get a call from one of those guys pretty frequently here. Pretty easy c-bet for pot here for like protection and value. He can certainly check call ace king and ace queen's highs and stuff like that. And if he doesn't, sure, cool, we get protection. We have a pretty strong hand. Could 3-bet pre, but I think it's pretty marginal. Cutoff versus UTG. Versus 3x, I think this is a marginal defend, but I think it's a mandatory one. Like, I don't think it's gonna win a lot of money necessarily, but I think the suited king being in position has to be a call even for 3x. Right here, flatting or 3-betting are fine. I'm gonna throw in the 3-bet. Get a fold. Probably the best result. Or more than likely the best result pre-flop. The queen 8 suited for min in the small blind. Oh, if he now overcalls, oh man, I want to play this hand. It's a really junky hand, but both of them are like short stacking recreationals, right? And it's min. Oh man, this is close. This is really close. I would flat a lot of hands here. I don't know if queen 8 really makes a cut. For the sake of recording, for the sake of getting into a spot, let's click the call button. But this is really close, I think. I'm happy about flatting a lot of hands. Queen 8 is really on the marginal side here, though. For sure on the marginal side. We can 1/3 here. I will 1/3 here. We turn second pair. There's no real reason to lead. Still. Relatively fine hand to check call. Pretty not a draw still. A lot of outs. No real reason to check raise here. He's not gonna fold if he has a better hand, for the most part. On this river, it's kind of bet small. Snap bet small. So obviously it's never a fold. Can rule out that option. The question now just is if we can value shove this. He's a recreational. He did check the flop. So by checking the flop, he doesn't really have 10s, kings, king 10 deuces anymore. I don't think he really has king queen checking the flop. I think king queen generally bets the flop. The question is, can we really get value though? Like, what are we targeting? Like ace queen? That seems pretty thin. It seems pretty thin to check raise here. The only reason for me to check raise is that he's a recreational. And that he bet really small on the river, because I think if he had a better hand, he generally would have bet bigger, because that's what recreationals like to do. They like to bet what their hand is worth. And kind of in that sense, tell us what they have. So I do think we can actually go for the check raise here. I don't expect to get called a ton by worse hands, but I do think it's definitely possible. I do think we are just not beat enough of the time. Yeah. So that kind of means that he could. So here's the thing. That kind of means that he could check back King Queen on the flop, right? If he checks back Ace King on the flop. But I still don't think he has King Queen simply because of river sizing. I don't think he bets so small on the river and on the turn for that sake. Yeah, right. He bet pretty small on turn as well, I think. Pretty easy call. We could jam here, I suppose, at this SPR. But I don't mind just calling and taking a turn and going from there, seeing what he does. He bets roughly around half pot. We're probably going to call here. Honestly, our implied odds are still good enough. It's going to be easy to play the river if we hit a pair or like if it's not a club pair or if we hit a spade, we just call. Yeah, we're just going to call here. I just think we have too much equity to fold. And we have certainly some implied odds. I don't think at this SPR he ever folds if we hit. It's a relatively good river. I still don't think he really folds a lot, honestly. I don't think he folds a lot. I don't think he folds pocket tens here for what it's worth. So we're gonna jam it in. And he just snap folds, which might or might not mean that he snap folded pocket tens or nines. Might also mean that he just had ace high. So the queen eight, main reason why I shoved the river is because he bets so small. Just don't think he has the better hands there a lot. On this river, we're just gonna check down and take our showdown. Certainly have some showdown value. Certainly can win. If he allows us to. I'm not gonna call here. It's kind of hard to have a raw bluff here. It's not impossible. Just not gonna call versus the half-pot river lead. I think he has too many ace 3, ace 2, ace 4 type of hands there. So yeah, we're at 36 minutes currently. Gonna try to keep the parts roughly at around 35-40 minutes. So gonna wrap things up here soonish. And yeah, as always, any questions, any comments, want to talk about any of the specific hands, post it in the comments. Gonna surely answer to all of them. And hope you enjoyed this part 2. Hope you will be back for part 3 and 4. And yeah. Have fun at your grind. Cheerio. And speak to you soon. Bye bye.